Warriors of National Guard Recruiting. This is Command Sergeant Major retired Dave Eustace with military recruiting experts for your Training Tuesday podcast for August 8th, 2023. For a traditional FY, we have 37 match days remaining and 53 calendar days to go. Today, we have the great pleasure and honor to have Sergeant First Class Connery from the great state of Missouri, the 20 and 21 Recruiter of the Year. Am I right about that?
21 and 22, Sergeant Major.
21 and 22. I knew I was going to get it wrong. So we've had you on the podcast before, but it's always good to let the folks that listen to know a little bit about your guard story and how you arrived in the recruiting battalion and where you're at right now.
Absolutely, Sergeant Major. Yep, thanks for inviting me. My second time on the podcast. Came into the military 2006. Came into recruiting 2018. So I was kind of a seasoned NCO by the time I came into recruiting. I started in the Title 10 program over with the ASO office doing prior service records. Did that for a little over a year, and I was invited to the Missouri RRBN annual conference, and that's what really kind of got me into recruiting. I came and I interacted with the recruiters. I spent the week at their breakouts, learned kind of what they were doing a little bit, and there was just a real culture of excellence in the battalion in 2018. Making mission was standard. Exceeding mission is what was rewarded. It was, work hard, play hard. And I said, man, I want to be part of that. And so I went ahead and put on the badge in 2019 and has been recruiting successfully since then. I was, like you said, the 21 and 2022 Missouri Recruiter of the Year. We actually just ended our RY in July, and I came in second this year. So, I personally, I always seek to go above mission. And then after that, wherever it takes me is where it takes me. But I always set my goal above mission because I feel like that's what is expected, and that's what I expect out of myself. Since we met last time, it was April 2022. When we got on the podcast last time, I remember telling you my promotion order to E7 had just hit my inbox, and so it's been a great year as a senior leader in the Missouri Recruiting Battalion. I've gotten to learn a lot more than just individual production, but mentoring, coaching, and being that leader to the future, big recruiters in our organization, and I've really enjoyed it a lot.
Well, most people that listen know that we're in the last part of this podcast. We're winding it down, and generally, you're going to hear from senior NCOs that have been around for 17, 18 years, and are sergeants major or retired folks that I think are just excellent recruiting people. The reason why I wanted to have you on is, well, first of all, I think you will be a sergeant major someday. It's probably not right around the corner, but you have the attributes of someone that should make sergeant major in recruiting. But secondly, and maybe most importantly, is the attitude that you always display in what you're putting out there about the National Guard, whether it be on social media or things that I've observed you doing this podcast. You always seem to be incredibly positive about this job and the opportunities that it provides. And I really do think our recruiters need to hear that. They need to understand it, and they need to believe it. And so, kind of right out of the gate, being in recruiting for a minute now, you got 5 years down the trail, 4 plus, 5. How do you remain so positive about the organization and the job?
Yeah, man, that is the question, isn't it, Sergeant Major? And I feel like that is the number one thing that is really hurting new recruiters who are coming into this recruiting coliseum post Genesis, post COVID, political turmoil, funding issues. They're having a really hard time staying positive about the job. I think my positivity, I was hired on, I feel like, and you'd have to talk to my leadership, but I was hired on, I feel, because my history in the Army has been, I want to do really well. I want to exceed standard, whatever it was, whether I was a training NCO, a squad leader, whatever. I wanted to be the best at what I did because I don't want anybody else to fail because I failed. And so I had, it kind of reminded me of your interview with the Sergeant Major from New York. I had a lot of expectations on myself because I didn't want to fail the people around me. And so I came into it with a clear head, and I just wanted to do the best I could right out at the gate. And I did well. My first year, I went 19 for 16, and it was great. When you're successful in recruiting, it's great. Everybody loves you. The sky opens up. You're getting accolades from your command, outside your command, from your peers, and life is just good, And so I don't want life to ever be bad. So I will always try to stay on that higher echelon of recruiters in my state because I like that feeling. I like the feeling that I've done well. And now that I'm in this position as being a senior leader in the organization, I really, really like being sought after, for tips, tricks, TTPs, what's working, what's not working, what would you try on this situation? How should I resell? I really like that. I really enjoy being a resource to other recruiters, like I had a resource for myself. And for the new recruiters, circle back, for the new recruiters that are coming in that don't have all that yet, and they're just seeing all the crap in front of them. You got to remember, one, why'd you want to be a recruiter? Because we don't have dazzers, right? We were all boarded in to do this. We wanted to become a recruiter. We convinced the battalion to hire us. Why is it? My why is when I was a squad leader in Qatar and I had all these young junior soldiers from very rural Missouri towns who were talking about their college plans, their trade school plans, how they're coming up from abject poverty that we have in southern Missouri, and all the things the National Guard's doing for them. That's why I came into recruiting, because those guys really motivated me, and the culture of the battalion cultivated that in me. People need to find their why. Why did you take this job? Because you probably wanted to give back to people who could use what this organization provides. I wouldn't be successful if I didn't believe that we are the best military option by far. And I go into it with that feeling. When I talk to somebody and they're like, well, I'm considering this or I'm considering that, I want them to know we will support everything they could do in their life, and we are the best option for them. And so my why is still, how can I help the soldier? How can I help this person? How can this organization benefit them? And I think a lot of new recruiters, and we talked about this back in April when Genesis was first coming out, they got to ignore the static. They got to ignore the noise. They got to ignore all the negativity that's out there, because there's a lot, and possibly rightfully so. It's a hard environment right now, but they have to ignore it, and they have to get back to the why. Why am I doing this? Why did I take this job? What motivated me to become a recruiter? And then focus on the success stories that they're building. Because if you focus on that, your referral base, your attitude, your motivation will take care of you in your prospecting.
Yeah, and I think there's the re-emphasizing finding the why you took this job and all of those things is really important. But something else that is coming across in your communication that I'll just clarify, you can tell me if you disagree. The conditions are the conditions. For crying out loud, if we had the opportunity to change the conditions, no doubt we would. We would, our qualification standard as recruiters would be drastically different than it is now. And we would say yes to a lot more people. Not sure that that would be the best thing for the military, but as recruiters, we have a wide open door. And
Mhm.
just, and just accepting that someone else is going to make these rules. But that doesn't diminish the opportunity that's in front of us as individual recruiters and as an organization. It's still the best organization of all the branches of service. It offers the most versatility and terrific options to live at home and serve at home and go off to college and utilize those benefits and have a real impact on your community. And so having that in front of you. Another thing that I'm hearing, and you can maybe expand on it, is you're getting an opportunity to make an impact on the peer group and subordinates. And one of the things that people that wear your rank really struggle with, because we don't make NCOICs every month, right?
Yeah.
Is how am I going to distinguish myself as a sergeant first class amongst this peer group? And
Mhm.
only a handful take that mantle, and that's who get promoted. The other ones have a tendency to get bitter about the position and get negative. So if you could speak to that, like that opportunity to really impact people makes a huge difference on how you're viewed within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. Like, I don't love the current recruiting environment. It's not wonderful, but I can't change that. And I trust that my leadership is calling Metcom and calling NGB all the time, wanting to make it easier for recruiters to make mission. I know they're doing that. And so they're doing their piece. I got to do my part. Is it annoying that I have to send somebody a pre screen on the 17th of July to get a August 14th enlistment? Yeah, that's annoying. I don't love that. But I can also tell you that if I am not successful as a recruiter because I'm relying on those excuses, I am not going to get very far in this organization. I'm just not. Everybody can use that excuse across the 54 that the environment is cruddy. That's not going to separate me from anybody. What I have been successful doing, what will separate me from my peer group, is going 110% of my mission the past 4 years consecutively, right? Amongst everything, amongst COVID, amongst shutdowns, amongst Genesis, MRoad, and now we have the Metcom staffing shortages. Like, amongst all of that, being able to see these obstacles as what they are, and then establishing new TTPs and new ways of processing that's still successful while pushing through the muck, because I do always look forward. My next promotion date, if I do everything right, is 2025. So as a senior leader in this organization, timing is incredibly important. I want to ensure that by 2025, I have done everything in my realm of influence to distinguish myself among my peers. Production is a big part of that. I mean, we're in the recruiting and retention battalion. You got to produce. But another part of that is, what type of producer are you? Are you a selfish recruiter, right? Do you recruit based on your timelines that's convenient for you? Do you sandbag at the end of the year? Do you just put in the one a month that you got to put in because that's what's going to get you off the bad guy list? Or are you a team player? Are you a recruiter that puts them in as fast as you can put them in, when you can put them in, and working with individuals across the organization, not just your team, but your section, your state? Are you somebody that if Sergeant Major Gladback, my battalion sergeant major, if he reached out to a recruiter 200 miles away from me and said, "What's your opinion of Sergeant Connery?" If your peers can give you a positive evaluation that you've helped them, you've assisted them, you're a go-to guy that they can reach out to, and your team is also doing the same thing, then not only are you a strong producer, but you're a strong leader. And if you're a strong producer and a strong leader, you have a future within your organization at that E8, E9 level.
Well, and really what you're talking about, and something that I like to emphasize, is you want to leave no doubt, not just amongst the leadership, but amongst the peer group. It won't be a crazy thing when that promotion list comes out in 2025 to see your name at the top or very close to the top, right?
Yeah.
Your peer group will understand that. Oh yeah, he's been tearing it up all this time. He makes other people better. He takes time with the new kids. He cares about this organization. And that is, all of those things are within your control. Attitudes, behaviors, actions. And I do think probably the toughest time of being a recruiter is when you're a new recruiter. So having someone that's been down the trail a little bit like you is incredibly helpful to those new recruiters, not just on your team, but within your state. What are some of the things that you've done with the new kids, as I call them, to try to get them off on that same kind of mindset that you're on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first part, we hired 3 new recruiters between, I want to say, February and May 2023 on my team. And the first part, is we're gone with the days are, here's a GSA key, go out there and get enlistments. Those are done. You have to be a regulation not expert, but you have to be deep in the regulations to perform nowadays. And so the first part I feel like we did was the institutional training, right? We have a really good new recruiter orientation in Missouri. And then I took my SQI4 slides, I updated them with the things I felt like new recruiters need to know right out the gate. And that was eligibility, incentives, and then packet building, right? So that was the stuff that we did first before we really got out there. And then we went out and prospected. And I don't mean like they went out and prospected. We went out and prospected. We went to the schools. We went out there to the local community events and stuff like that. And then I let them watch me work. And then I wanted to see them do the same thing. And we just kind of flowed, and we all worked together. And then they were able to kind of start stepping up. Now, we went through an organizational change in July. And so I had to leave those guys brand new into their development. So I haven't been able to see what the results have been yet. But, I feel like that is a big part of this job now, because we can't just rely on hiring people, throwing them out to the street and say, bring me recruits. That's how a lot of us did it. And it worked back then when recruits were falling out of the sky and you were just catching them. But nowadays you have to be a smart recruiter, and you have to be able to know, am I talking to somebody that's qualified? What can I offer them? Where am I going to find them? How can I get this conversation going? So let them watch you do some of your cold calls. And I don't mean text, I mean cold calls. Let them watch you hit the streets. Let them watch you get into your schools. Teach them the regulatory guidance they need up front before they go to recruiting school so they can be successful. And then just be present. Be a present leader, because you're going to get questions that you forgot you had. And I've only been doing this a few years, but I mean, these are questions that, you've just kind of forgotten about over the years, simple things. And you're just like, oh yeah, I think you do need to know that. And so, I really think that's really what a recruiting leader does, is that mentoring, coaching, but there is that institutional training that I think you do need to push forward on early on now.
Well, that training element seems to be much more important, because a good hunk of our recruiters are Gen Zers too.
Yeah.
So the folks that we're hiring, and that population they got their first cell phone before they were 12 years old.
Hmm.
So they need to see you area canvas. They
Yeah.
need to see you interrupt someone's day to start a conversation, because conceptually, that's crazy. It's a crazy thing to do. Like I could just, I could do texting instead of phone calling, right? I could do a social media post when I'm in an area instead of going up and talking to someone that looks like they're qualified. They can do that. They're certainly going to have more luck of really calling someone and really going up to someone. So it's very difficult to believe unless they see it. I'm quite a bit more old school than you, but there was this old thing that we used to say is, you see one, you do one, and you teach one. So when you're learning how to do any aspect of recruiting, you need to see somebody do it. And then
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you do it like right now.
Hmm.
Not think about it, go do it. And then show someone else how to do it. And then you'll have it you'll have a 360 on that particular thing. So
Yeah. And I think, what we call, and we preach this a lot, it's intentionality, right? You do things with the intention of enlisting somebody. So, your cold call, your interview, there needs to be an intention there. You're not just doing it to say, "Hey, Sergeant Connery, how did I do on that call?" No, you cold call to get an appointment. You have the appointment to do the packet building and send the projection. You make the projection to get an enlistment. Like, you need to teach that early on, because the two things I'm noticing with struggling new recruiters right now is failure to close, and there's no intentionality on the next step. They're just so happy to be in front of somebody, or they're so happy to get a yes, they forgot there's a step after that. And then these days, there's a lot of steps after that. And so I hate step processing. When I started, I was against it completely, but you do have to coach your recruiters. What's your next step? When this appointment comes in at 1 o'clock, what's your next step? That's right. Your next step is you're going to submit a pre-screen. So when your goal for this appointment is to go ahead and have a pre-screen signed and submitted, so that we can get ahead of that 10, 15, 20-day MEPS backlog. You always have to preach that with these new recruiters, because they'll have a great appointment. And if you as a recruiting leader didn't sit in on it, you'll be like, all right, cool. So what are we doing? And they're like, yeah, I think I'll probably call and see when they can bring their packet in. And you're like, oh, buddy, you're already losing them. You're already losing right now. That should have already been established, the timeline, everything. So, like I said, the two big things I'm seeing is a failure to close, and the lack of intentionality of what the next step is to get the enlistment.
well, in those areas are really important for this reason, because it isn't turn and burn, right? So if we don't have that schedule and that battle rhythm, we won't get back to prospecting in time.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm moving this person forward, I get them to a point where it's as far as I can take until they're cleared to process, or things have filtered through the system. Well, as soon as I take them as far as I can get them, I'll maintain contact with them, but I got to be finding somebody else,
Yeah.
just because of how the time works. And I think that intentionality verbiage is very good. Like, we got to get next steps. We got to get paperwork going, because we're not putting someone in 5 days anymore, or 3 days anymore. So that's good stuff. Well, in your state, you've traditionally done a recruiting year, and I think maybe you're going back to an FY. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. So right now we're in a basically an abbreviated 3-month recruiting year, right? So we are transitioning from the July to July RY to the FY. And so right now, everybody with a recruiting badge that is not a section chief basically is on a 4 mission from July to the end of September. And then we'll get our RY 24 missions in September.
So it's a bit of a controversial thing, right? Um,
Sure.
And so you made mission,
Mhm.
and you would traditionally be back in a new FY right now.
Yeah.
So how did you receive that? It's coming to you that you're getting 4 more, basically. And how do you deal with that significant change in the organization? Because people are experiencing that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's something, it needed to happen. I mean, the moving to the FY makes sense when you look at the new RIP setup, and that's our recruiter incentive pay. It's going to be based off an FY mission letter, so we knew it needed to happen one way or another. The challenge was how. How do we transition? And so, realistically, I think our organization did the best they could do with the circumstances. They put us on a 4 mission, which traditionally we'd be starting a new RY in July. And so, even though, sandbagging and everything, you shouldn't do it, put them in how you have them. What traditionally happens every year is recruiters have a magical, amazing July, especially the ones that missioned out last year in June. And so, traditionally, we have a really hot July in Missouri as far as recruiting. In this case, it works out for you because our battalion tied incentives to success. So, 4 is your mission, got it. Mission is always standard. You get 5, you got 2 off your next year mission. That's a pretty hot commodity right now. You get 6, you're going to Austin on a staff ride. So once again, we are incentivizing going above and beyond. But me personally, Dave, I never turn off, so even when I became a team leader, I was still missioned like a recruiter, because of some things that was going on. So I never really had a chance to be like, I'm just going to rest on my laurels. I put in my last enlistment for RY 23 June 26, 3 days before the RY was over, and I was already over mission. That's the way I always do business because, especially in this environment, you can't cool anymore. You just can't do it. The make mission go fishing, that was fun. It was great. But when it takes you 60 to 90 days to build a funnel now, going fishing is going to cost you a lot. You always have to be successfully putting them in. Now, if you're above, you can let off the gas a little bit, but you can't ever take your hands off the wheel anymore because it takes so long to build a funnel and get some enlistments in.
Well, something that is probably a behavior set for you, but maybe not for some of these recruiters that are listening, is always being on. And what it means to me is you're a sensor all of the time. Under 40, not fat, I should have a communication with you. But what does it mean to you, and how does that translate into your everyday life if you're always on as a recruiter?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, it never turns off. And, you do kind of become a little burnt out sometimes because, I look at my processing board every day. And every day when I look at my processing board, the first thought that comes to my mind is, what is stopping these processors from enlisting? If it's MEPS timelines, okay, got it. But if it's packet building, if it's 369s, 370s, whatever it is, I get started right on it. And so I'm just wired that way, but it is exhausting. Now, let me be clear. I take vacations. I'm on leave today. I'm on leave. I'm burning Friday leave all the way through the rest of the FY. So I'm on 4-day weeks basically throughout the rest of the FY. My wife and I just went on a 1-week vacation to Savannah. We go on about 2 vacations a year. I take that time for sure because this is a lot. I would be smoking out the ears if I didn't. But I don't know another way to be successful in this organization, in our market and where we're at down here, without having to be on all the time. If I was, a campus recruiter, I might have a different kind of battle rhythm. If I was an inner city recruiter and I had walk-in traffic in my storefronts, I might have a different kind of a battle rhythm there too. I noticed that when I went to the DSMAC this year, and I think the top recruiter in one of the states worked in a metropolitan area in a storefront. And he's like, I'll be honest, man, I don't prospect a lot because we have so much foot traffic coming in. We're just processing, processing, processing. That's a totally different battle rhythm than mine. And I'm not knocking it at all because you're working the city, so you're working drug tests, you're working law, you're working a lot of other stuff that I don't really have to work a lot. So everybody's hustling, but for me, being a rural recruiter in the suburbs, of Missouri ain't great, right? We're talking like 40, 50,000 people, not huge, giant suburbs. But being where I'm at, I have to do it all. I have to be in the streets. I have to be on social media. I have to be doing cold calls. I have to be in the schools, and I have to find time to get this processing hurdle knocked out. And so if there's a better way to do it than just being like wired tight, I don't know, man. But the work-life balance is still something I managed to get.
Well, my last question for you is it's always a tough one to ask a recruiter this. And you're leading recruiters now, so maybe you've tipped a little bit more in my direction. So right now there's recruiters out there, they got three to five sessions to go for their mission. They've been on an FY, and they're starting to have that, we only got 37 MAPS days. We only got 53 calendar days. And the idea of hitting her hard next year is popping into their head.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm not the worst recruiter. I'm probably not going to get fired or, that situation. What would you say to them about finishing strong and getting after those contracts?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So let me bring it all the way back to where I started. So I came to an annual conference in 2018. And in 2018, the Missouri Recruiting Retention Battalion was hot, fire hot. And I wasn't even a badge recruiter yet, right? I was just a guy on Title 10 ADOS. And we gave out certificates at the banquet for everybody that makes mission. You get like a nice little certificate. And then for the ones that exceed mission, you got like a little trophy. And then you got like your chief of staff, your tag, and your D54 awards. And you got your top 10 team leader awards, section chief awards. And so I'm sitting there watching at banquet, and it seemed like the whole room was getting awards. Like everybody was a mission maker. Everybody was exceeding mission. The top 10, everybody was clapping, standing up. And I remember vividly looking around the room, and there was maybe a dozen, maybe less than a dozen that weren't standing up, and they weren't getting awards because they were the ones that didn't make mission. And back then there was like a scarlet letter, I was like, oh my gosh, don't talk to him. He didn't make mission. He's a leper. And so I was picking up on that really quickly. Like, wow, this is an organization of success. And I saw the difference, like the dark cloud that was over the non-mission makers. But then over there, you got people doing handstands and cartwheels in their ASUs. They're like, life was good. Yeah. As somebody personally that's been that guy that's exceeded mission and been the top dog and having everybody up there clapping for you, it's an amazing feeling. And it feels so much better than being the guy that didn't make it. And so my main thing, and I think our organization's main thing right now, is getting back into a culture of winning, because winning matters and it feels so good. And so if you're one of those recruiters and your goal is not to be like the bottom half, or the bottom, whatever the benchmark is your organization made, that's a problem. Your goal needs to be exceeded mission, because if mission's your goal and you miss it by one or two, that's like getting a 58 on the ACFT. You failed. Doesn't matter if you failed it by getting a 40 or if you got a 59. 60 was the standard, right? And so you got to look at it that way. Aim higher than mission, so that if you miss that goal, you still make mission. I can tell you, and you can verify this if you want, I'll give you names. I told my leadership every year that I was award winner, that I was going to win that award. My rookie year, when I got the Rookie of the Year award, I told my leadership, I'm going for it, boss. And I pushed for it. The next year, when I went for D54, I said I was going to be a top 3 recruiter that year for sure. I had already been Rookie of the Year, D54. I wanted to do it again. Top 3. Top 3 took me all the way to that top echelon. So I just pushed a little harder and went and got the jacket again. You need to set those goals, because I'm telling you right now, man, there are some recruiters in my state who are facing some accountability, and it hurts. And they were just aiming, and I'm not going to call them out by name or nothing, but they know who they are because this is mandatory listening. They're probably listening right now. They were just aiming not to be in that bottom echelon. And that's what they were aiming for. And they missed that target, and they were in that bottom echelon. And the accountability piece is coming on. That hurts. That sucks. And these are my friends. I love them. Great dudes. But they got to reorient their compass in a way that says, I'm not aiming to be at the bottom, or I'm not aiming to just not get a call from the sergeant major. I'm aiming to be mission exceeded. So that's what I would say. If you're in your last couple months and you're looking out and you're like, I could probably get to 80% and my leadership ain't going to come down too hard on me on that, man, you're setting yourself up. Because if you're aiming for 80 and you're getting 70, 65, what are you doing? Why would you set yourself up for that? Go ahead and push. We're getting back into schools, new school year starting up. If you're a campus recruiter, you got all kinds of new college kids